Just before the election, I went through the Reform Party's manifesto briefly, and one of the items I picked up on was the proposal that the teaching curriculum, the curriculum that school children get, has to have more of a patriotic edge to it. And I said, yeah, that's all very admirable, but how are you going to get that patriotic edge when you have the teachers working against you? That's an unfortunate thing, but I know teachers. I have personal experience with them, and yeah, you know, they could subvert anything if they really wanted to. Okay, and then I just saw this article here in the Daily Telegraph talking about that very thing, so I'll go through that with you. I'm Granniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. Labour Schools Minister Catherine McKinnell lamented that despite the brilliance of our teachers, too many pupils are not meeting the expected standard. That is a piece of political double talk that borders on the surrealistic. What do you mean? The teachers, despite the brilliance of the teachers, the pupils aren't keeping up. What? The pupils are usually, except in some very rare circumstances, the pupils are what the teachers are. If the teachers are good, the pupils are good. If the teachers aren't so hot, then the pupils end up not so hot either. And I'm blowing my own trumpet here. When I was teaching one class at the same level as another one in the same school. And the other teacher was, well, not as strict as I was. And guess whose pupils came out with the higher grades at the end of the year? Yeah, I'll leave you to imagine that. I insisted on them sitting in their seats, and I was a figure of fun in the teachers department, and turning in homework in time and self-expression. No, you just learn this stuff, kids. And they had really nice results. I felt really proud when I got to the end of that year. And it's the same school, the same intake. I know it can be done. Okay, but here, despite the brilliance of the teachers, the pupils just aren't keeping up. Stop blaming the pupils. They are children. That's the point of being a child. You try to get away until you meet the boundary, and then you stop. If nobody gives you any boundaries, you just don't stop. For years, education was the positive story the Tories could tell. Almost none of this was achieved with the help and support of our benighted educators. Yeah, and we have another example. I keep referring to Batley, but that's a great example. A teacher was teaching a course. He wasn't going off script. That was the course. It featured Muhammad, or rather depictions of Muhammad. And what happened was, I think a couple of pupils who had been warned not to stay in the class if they found it offensive, but they stayed anyway, found it offensive, whipped up a whole thing. And this is an example of pupils actually getting away with what they could get away with. These kids were doing that, I should think, a lot of the way because they wanted to put one over on their teachers. Anyway, whatever the reasons, there were crowds outside the school. The teacher's life was threatened, and he and his family are still in hiding, I believe. But one of the reasons why he was so easy to identify and find was because the teaching union, of which he was a member, published his name and contact details. I don't know whether they published his address, but it shouldn't have been that difficult to find in a place like Batley anyway. They published his name to the world. You know, and their publication was also online. That was his teaching union. Instead of going to bat for their teacher, they were going to bat for the opposition. And this is the problem. There are committed and intelligent teachers, obviously, but they're not getting the backing from their unions and their, well, school principals. Many of the problems with our education system, from staffing shortages to pupil attainment, stem from decisions pushed with maniacal fervour by union chiefs. Few criticise the unions. Well, I do, because I know for a fact it's the unions, because the teachers who aren't that satisfied by teaching, they're the ones who go up the greasy pole to become sort of union representatives and then union executives, and they are the ones like the doctors and the university professors who get a fashionable bee in their bonnet, and they then start experimenting on the very people they're entrusted to take care of. So I also made a video about how teachers were in secret allowing children to change their gender while at school, and to physically well, you know, breast binding, for instance, isn't exactly mutilation, but it can amount to that over time. So to mutilate themselves. I was talking to a young fellow. I was quite astonished by what he didn't know. He's very good at dealing with computer stuff, and he's a professional DJ as well in his spare time. You know, a really bright kid. Well, a bit more than a kid, actually. But so ignorant of the history of the world. And if we want people to respect our cultural heritage, they have to know what our cultural heritage is, haven't they? So people, you know, who wish to take control of the culture are instinctively know that they mustn't give the children any background now, because otherwise they're going to reject this brave new world that is being posited. And yeah, what was it? He who controls the past controls the present, and he who controls the present controls the future. Unfortunately, our state systems have given an enormous amount of power into the hands of people who don't deserve that power, who are using it only for self-aggrandizement or for the trafficking of an ideology that they themselves barely understand. The more people know about it, the more people can do something about it. Okay, till next time. You can help my channel by clicking like, by subscribing, by clicking the notification bell, and by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels are in the description, also links to donation sites, but really the best way you can help me is simply by clicking like. Thank you.